My husband Mark, 35M, and I, 32F, have been married for 6 years. We have a 3-year-old daughter, Sophie. Our relationship has had its ups and downs, but I always thought we were solid. That is, until last week when I stumbled upon Mark's secret notebook. Mark and I met in college. We were both studying business, though he was a year ahead of me. I remember the first time I saw him. He was giving a presentation in our marketing class, and I was captivated by his confidence and charm. We started dating a few months later, and it felt like a whirlwind romance. We moved in together after graduation and got married 2 years later. The early years of our marriage were blissful. We both landed good jobs in the city, bought our first home, and traveled whenever we could. We talked about having kids, but we weren't in a rush. We were enjoying our time together, building our careers, and saving for the future. When I got pregnant with Sophie, it was a surprise, but a welcome one. Mark was over the moon. He painted the nursery himself, read all the parenting books he could find, and even took a few weeks off work when Sophie was born. He was the perfect doting father and husband. But things started to change when Sophie was about 6 months old. Mark's father, who he was very close to, passed away unexpectedly. It hit Mark hard. He became withdrawn and started working longer hours. I chalked it up to grief and the stress of being a new parent. I tried to be supportive, giving him space when he needed it and taking on more of the childcare responsibilities. As Sophie grew, things seemed to improve. Mark was more engaged, playing with Sophie and helping out around the house. But there was still something off. He'd have mood swings, snapping at small things, and then apologizing profusely. I suggested he talk to someone about his father's death, but he always brushed it off, saying he was fine. Last week, I was cleaning our home office. Mark had been complaining about not being able to find some important documents, so I decided to organize the desk drawers. That's when I found it. A small black notebook tucked away in the back of the bottom drawer. I'd never seen it before, and curiosity got the better of me. I know I shouldn't have, but I opened it and started reading. What I found inside shook me to my core. The notebook was filled with entries spanning the last 2 years. In it, Mark wrote about how he resented me and Sophie. He complained about how having a family had ruined his life and how he wished he could just leave us. There were multiple entries where he fantasized about running away with his coworker, Jessica. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I couldn't believe the man I loved, the father of my child, could harbor such dark thoughts. As I read on, it only got worse. Mark wrote about how he sometimes wished I would get into an accident so he could be free. He even mentioned considering ways to make it look like an accident himself. I was terrified. I didn't know what to do. I thought about confronting Mark, but I was scared of how he might react. I couldn't stop thinking about all the times he'd been loving and supportive. How could that be the same person who wrote these horrible things? I decided to reach out to my best friend, Lily. We've known each other since high school, and she's always been my confidant. When I told her what I'd found, she was horrified. She insisted I come stay with her immediately. I packed a bag for Sophie and myself, told Mark I was visiting Lily for a few days, and left. Now I'm at Lily's trying to figure out what to do next. I can't stop thinking about the notebook. Was it just a way for Mark to vent his frustrations? Or were these his true feelings? The thought of going back home terrifies me, but I also feel guilty for taking Sophie away from her father. Mark has been texting and calling, asking when we're coming home. He says he misses us and can't wait to see us. It's like he's a completely different person from the one who wrote in that notebook. I don't know what to do. Part of me wants to confront Mark, to hear his explanation. But another part of me is scared of what might happen if I do. What if he gets angry? What if he tries to hurt me or Sophie? I keep thinking back to when Mark and I first met. He was so different then. Carefree, loving, always making me laugh. I remember our first date. We went to a local fair, and he won me a stuffed bear at one of the games. I still have that bear, sitting on a shelf in our bedroom. Now, looking at it makes me feel sick. I'm also worried about Sophie. She keeps asking for her daddy, and I don't know what to tell her. How do I explain the situation to a 3-year-old? Sophie and Mark have always been close. He's the one who taught her to ride her tricycle, who reads her bedtime stories every night. The thought of taking that away from her breaks my heart. But then I remember the words in that notebook. How can I trust him with our daughter after reading those things? What if his resentment towards her grows? What if he acts on those horrible thoughts? I feel like my whole world has been turned upside down. The man I thought I knew, the father of my child, suddenly feels like a stranger. A dangerous stranger. I'm considering talking to a lawyer, but I'm scared of what that might mean for our family. I always swore I'd never put Sophie through a divorce. My own parents divorced when I was young, and it was a traumatic experience. I vowed I'd never do that to my own child. But now I'm not sure if staying with Mark is safe. I need advice. Am I overreacting? Should I confront Mark? Should I take Sophie and leave for good? I feel lost and scared, and I don't know what to do next. I keep replaying moments from our relationship in my head, trying to see if there were signs I missed. Was he always this unhappy? Did I do something to make him resent us so much? I remember how excited he was when we found out I was pregnant. He went out and bought a tiny pair of baby shoes the very next day. How did we go from that to this? I'm also worried about the practical aspects of leaving. I've been a stay-at-home mom since Sophie was born. I don't have a job or any income of my own. How would I support Sophie if I left Mark? And what about our house, our savings, all the life we've built together? Part of me still loves Mark, or at least the person I thought he was. We've been through so much together. College graduations, new jobs, buying our first home, becoming parents. How can I just throw all of that away? But then I think about those words in the notebook, and I feel sick all over again. I'm scared, confused, and heartbroken. I don't know how to move forward from here. Any advice would be greatly appreciated. Edit. Thank you all for your support and advice. I'm overwhelmed by the responses. To address some common questions. 1. No, Mark has never been physically abusive. 2. The notebook was hidden, not left out in the open. 3. I have taken photos of the entries as evidence. 4. I haven't told Mark I found the notebook yet. I'll update when I've decided what to do next. Update 1. It's been a week since my last post, and a lot has happened. I want to thank everyone for their support and advice. It really helped me gather the courage to take action. After much deliberation, I decided to confront Mark. I knew I couldn't make any decisions without hearing his side of the story. I asked Lily to watch Sophie, and I met Mark at a public cafe near our house. When I told Mark about finding the notebook, his reaction surprised me. Instead of anger or denial, he broke down crying. He admitted to writing everything, saying he was going through a deep depression and the notebook was his way of venting his darkest thoughts. Mark explained that he'd been struggling with the pressures of being a husband and father. He said he felt trapped and overwhelmed, and writing those horrible things was his way of releasing those feelings. He swore he never meant any of it, and that he loved Sophie and me more than anything. He also revealed that he'd been having these feelings since his father died. Mark and his dad were very close, and he never really processed the grief. Instead, he buried it, and it manifested as resentment towards his new responsibilities. Mark told me about his childhood, something he'd never really opened up about before. His mother left when he was young, and his father raised him alone. He said he always worried he wouldn't be a good enough father because he didn't have a mother figure in his life. When his dad died, he felt like he lost his only parenting role model. While I was relieved that Mark didn't react violently, I couldn't shake the fear and hurt his words had caused. I told him I needed time and space to process everything. I also insisted that he start seeing a therapist to work through his issues. Mark agreed to everything. He moved out temporarily, staying with his brother. He started therapy right away and has been sending me updates after each session. He's also been writing me letters, apologizing, and explaining his thoughts and feelings in a healthier way. Meanwhile, I've been focusing on Sophie and myself. I've started looking for a job, realizing how financially dependent I've become on Mark. Lily has been an incredible support, helping with Sophie and offering a listening ear whenever I need to talk. I've also been in contact with a lawyer, just to understand my options. She advised me to keep all evidence of Mark's writings and our conversations, which I've been doing. Sophie has been asking about her dad a lot. I've been telling her that Daddy is staying with Uncle Jack for a while because he's not feeling well. It breaks my heart to see her miss him, but I know I'm doing what's best for her safety and my peace of mind. Mark has been respecting my boundaries, only contacting me about Sophie or his therapy progress. He's been asking to see Sophie, and after discussing it with my lawyer, I've agreed to supervise visits at Lily's house. The first visit was hard. Sophie was overjoyed to see Mark, but I felt tense the entire time. Mark was loving with Sophie, but I couldn't help remembering the words he'd written about her. Lily was there the whole time, which helped me feel safer. I'm still unsure about our future. Part of me wants to believe Mark, to think that those writings were just dark fantasies he never meant to act on. But another part of me can't forget the fear I felt when I read those words. I'm taking things one day at a time. I'm proud of myself for standing up for Sophie and me, for not just sweeping this under the rug, but I'm also scared of what the future holds. Will I ever be able to trust Mark again? Can our family heal from this? For now, I'm focusing on being the best mom I can be to Sophie, and on building a life that doesn't depend entirely on Mark. I'll update again when I have more news. Thank you all again for your support. It means more than you know. Update 2. It's been 2 months since my last update, and I wanted to share what's been happening. Mark has been consistent with his therapy and has been making progress. His therapist suggested we try couples counseling, which we've been doing for the past month. It's been difficult, but it's helping us communicate better. During one of our sessions, Mark revealed that he had been feeling inadequate as a father and husband long before Sophie was born. He grew up with a father who was always working and rarely present, and he was terrified of becoming the same kind of dad. Instead of talking about these fears, he internalized them, which led to his resentment. Mark also opened up about his relationship with his coworker, Jessica. He admitted that he had developed feelings for her, but he swore nothing physical ever happened. He said she represented an escape from his responsibilities, a fantasy of a simpler life. Hearing this was painful, but I appreciated his honesty. We've also had some hard conversations about our future. I realized that I had given up a lot of my independence when we got married, and I'm not willing to do that anymore. I've started a part-time job at a local bookstore and am taking online classes to update my marketing skills. Mark has been supportive of this, even offering to adjust his work hours to help with Sophie. Speaking of Sophie, she's been doing okay despite the changes. We've been honest with her in an age-appropriate way, explaining that Mommy and Daddy are working on some grown-up problems. She still has regular visits with Mark, which are now unsupervised but still at Lily's house. Last week, we had a family day at the park. It was the first time we've all been together outside of the supervised visits. It was strange at first, but seeing Mark and Sophie play together on the swings, hearing their laughter, it reminded me of the good times we've had as a family. As for our living situation, Mark is still staying with his brother. We've discussed him moving back home, but I'm not ready for that yet. I need to feel completely safe and trust him fully before I can consider it. There have been moments when I've considered ending our marriage. The pain of what I read in that notebook still haunts me sometimes. But then I see how hard Mark is working to change, how much he loves Sophie, and I wonder if we can build something new and stronger from this. I'm not making any permanent decisions yet. I'm giving myself time to heal and grow, to figure out who I am outside of being Mark's wife and Sophie's mom. It's scary, but also exciting. Last week, I went out with some friends for the first time in months. It felt good to laugh and talk about things other than my marriage problems. I realized how much I've isolated myself over the past few years, focusing solely on my family. I'm trying to reconnect with old friends and make new ones. Mark and I have also been working on co-parenting, even while living apart. We're trying to present a united front for Sophie, making decisions together about her care and upbringing. It's not always easy, but we're both committed to putting Sophie's needs first. I've been thinking a lot about what I want for my future, whether Mark is in it or not. I've always loved writing, and I've started working on a children's book in my spare time. It's just a small project for now, but it feels good to have something that's just for me. I want to thank this community again for all your support. Your advice and encouragement have been a lifeline during this difficult time. I don't know what the future holds for my family, but I feel stronger and more capable of facing it, whatever it may be.